Hey, thanks for stopping by. Good to see you. As always, I'm Jerrel. I'm just a normal, ordinary human being. I make video games for a living, and today I wanted to discuss with you the topic of what makes effective creature design. One of my favorite aspects about working on my games is being able to create creatures. I don't necessarily call them enemies or monsters because they can be used in a wide range of applications. This will be relevant to people who are creating video games or any other form of media, such as comic books, or if you just want to create visual art, film. The topics I'll be discussing today will be relevant to any kind of creature design. So the most important thing to consider when it comes to your creature design is the mechanical purpose in the context of the work. Again, your creature's mechanical purpose in the context of the work. What purpose does it serve in the work? We often will see creature design that is created on autopilot by people who don't necessarily consider these aspects, and they just create based on what others before them have created, and they tend to you can get by, you can skate away with that approach, which is a bit more reckless, but you lose the ability to take your art further, to create something more, to create something to the full extent of your ability. So it's important to understand these aspects. The second purpose you need to consider is what the narrative purpose is. What does it say about the world it inhabits? So again, those two purposes that you need to consider for your creature design is the mechanical purpose and the narrative purpose. Now, let's say for a video game, we will take the genre of JRPG and we'll say the creature is a green blob. These are the types of enemies that you see early on in your adventure. So the mechanical purpose of, say for example, a blob enemy in a JRPG, the mechanical purpose is to serve as an easy enemy for the player to defeat, to introduce the player to the concept of the battle mechanics in an environment where the player won't immediately lose. Those are generally easy enemies to deal with. So that is the purpose of, say, a blob enemy. Later in the video game, maybe you'll encounter something like a chimera creature, and it's part lion, part scorpion, part eagle, and maybe it can breathe fire. So the mechanical purpose of that creature would be to serve a more formidable foe, to serve as a threat against the player. But on another level, we also must consider the narrative purpose. So what do these creatures say about the world they inhabit? In a few moments, I'll go over a few of some of the most well-known and identifiable creatures from cinema, which happen to be some of my favorite monsters or creatures from cinema as well. What is important when you are considering your concept for your creatures are the key identifying traits. What is it about this creature design that makes it identifiable? What are the visual elements that make it unique? What is also very important to consider is having something recognizable. If you just have a formless mass of random pieces of flesh and body parts and nothing really is recognizable, it's very difficult for the audience, for the viewer, to engage with that and to really understand what that creature is. It is important to consider including something recognizable in that creature design so that people can relate to it on an instinctive level. And lastly, when it comes to the visual design of the creature, you need a visual hook. Again, that's probably one of the most important elements, even if you fail all other elements, is to have a strong visual hook. Because at the end of the day, the charisma of the creature that you are creating generally will lean heavily on the visual hook. This is usually the thing that stays with the audience, with the viewer. And I'll go over examples in just a moment. So with my work, I create all of my own concepts. I do my own 3D modeling, rigging, and animating. So I don't need to work with a team, which saves me a significant amount of time when it comes to my own creature design. If you are working with a team, you need to have a strong concept artist, and you need to have a healthy line of communication with the director to ensure that the result matches the vision of the product. The director has the end say when it comes to these designs, and the director needs to make sure that everything comes together. So if a concept artist starts creating work that is not in line with the vision of the project, the director needs to be able to say, look, this isn't right, let's make some revisions and get the vision back on track here. So that is important, to have that strong concept artist and artists who are willing to take criticism on board, because criticism is not a personal attack. It is only a part of the creative process, and it is an extremely vital part of the creative process. If you are working alone, you can use an approach that I use myself that I call concept on canvas. And this approach means that I don't do any concept work. It means I consider all of the aspects that I discussed earlier in this video. I spend about a week just mentally considering those. Sometimes I will take notes, but it's not often I will take notes when it comes to creature design. I'll consider it in my mind while I'm working on other aspects. That's a form of multitasking, so I can save time. So I'm actively working on other elements while I'm mentally considering the mechanical purpose, the narrative purpose, the key identifying traits, having something recognizable, and a visual hook. And so I use my approach, concept on canvas, and instead of doing concept art, I go straight into my 3D sculpting program and I sculpt my creature on the spot just there. So let's go ahead and look at some examples. The first example we'll look at is the xenomorph from the film Alien. This is such an iconic creature, and it's such a delight. It's so visually charismatic. And of course, the mechanical purpose of this creature is to pose a threat to the crew of the Nostromo. The mechanical purpose of this creature allows it to implant eggs into its victims, which in turn results in their victims' deaths. In the film, I don't think we see it actively eat anyone, but we do know that interactions with the creature always result in an untimely death. The narrative purpose, of course, is it informs us about the world that it inhabits, is that there are things out there that we don't understand that are far more dangerous than we could understand. So it is so vital to the overall story. The key identifying traits, of course, are that long, slender body, the tail, the skull that sort of goes and leans back, and the little tongue that turns into a mouth inside of its mouth. So it has key identifying traits. What is recognizable about it is that it's vaguely humanoid, because it has a humanoid body, arms, legs, and a head, but it is definitely not a human itself. And the visual hook, you really could say it's the skull shape and the tail and that sort of slick carapace look to the body. Really, really charismatic, really fantastic. Next, we shall consider the face hugger from the same film, Alien. The mechanical purpose, of course, is to tell the audience, or no, that would be the narrative purpose. The mechanical purpose would be, of course, to burst out of chest. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. The face hugger implants the chest burster, and the chest burster bursts out of the chest. And this all is a mechanical purpose. Of course, it all ties together, and with its narrative purpose is to explain the life cycle of these creatures, and it builds a sense of dread and horror, because it is something that we would not expect. It is something that we would not recognize, and it appears to be something that we absolutely have no way to defend against, which all makes it such an intriguing, very fascinating creature design. One of my favorite creatures is from the film Tremors, and these creatures are the graboids. These are fascinating. If you have not seen this film, I would strongly recommend getting a chance to watch the first Tremors movies. The follow-up movies are not that great, but the first one is very enjoyable. The creatures are so fantastic in there. I don't want to harp on too much about that, but I would strongly recommend giving that a watch. Next, we'll consider Freddy Krueger, who serves the mechanical purpose of infiltrating people's dreams. He's got really cool, interesting and inventive ways of handling his victims. And of course, his narrative purpose is to bring dread to people, to not just the protagonists of the stories, but the viewers as well. He's this form of a fear that is very difficult to deal with because he's not exactly tangible. So it's so fascinating. And of course, his key identifying traits would be his scarred face, his long claws, his sweater, his hat. Something recognizable about him is, of course, he's a human. He's got a face, even though it is messed up. And his visual hook, I would say, most likely his claws and his scarred face. And that is what makes him so memorable. You can consider the elements for yourself for, say, for example, Michael Myers from Halloween, which I will be watching this Halloween season. Michael Myers, of course, is quite identifiable, and you can consider for yourself his mechanical purpose, his narrative purpose, his key identifying traits, what is recognizable about him, and his visual hook. And that is so fascinating. Now, I want to discuss, lastly, The Thing, because The Thing works on so many levels. The creature in The Thing sort of breaks some of these rules, but in the best ways possible, in a very well-considered way. And that is that the creature itself keeps shape-shifting, and that in itself is a key identifying trait. You cannot precisely describe it because it can change form. It can look like a person, it can look like a dog, or any combination of those things, and that is the actual visual hook. Or rather, the visual hook of the creature is the state it is in while it is transforming, mid-transformation, from one form into another. There are key identifiable traits there, and something recognizable, because that's one of the important aspects of creature design, is what is effective and what is part of the horror of this creature, is that it is something recognizable. Once it becomes an animal, once it becomes a person, it is indistinguishable from those original organisms, and that is the horror of the creature. So that is so excellently considered. It is one of my favorite films, and if you haven't seen The Thing, I would strongly recommend it. The 80s film is one of my favorite films. So with my games, with Silver Falls, Guardians, and Metal Exterminators, that is available on the Switch right now. It is an action RPG that is based in short missions, and it features a story that is heavily focused on character relationships, and you get to see how these characters interact and how their relationships grow over the night, where these two characters meet for a blind date, and an accident at a ranch results in there being cryptids. There's a wide range of cryptids, so in this game, Silver Falls, Guardians, and Metal Exterminators, you not only get to play as a wide range of humans, but you also get to play as a bunch of different monsters as well. And you can unlock those by playing through the story or by connecting to other Silver Falls games, and I had an absolute blast creating the creatures for Silver Falls, Guardians, and Metal Exterminators. Again, that's exclusive to the Nintendo eShop, so please feel free to give that a look if you would like. I do have some monster models that I do give away for free. I make them pretty regularly. I have a couple up, so I'll put the links to the downloads in the description. So if you have a project that you are working on and you just need some monster models, then you can go ahead and download those. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you had some fun thinking about those creatures, and if you haven't seen those movies that I mentioned, go ahead and give them a watch. They're a whole lot of fun. Thanks very much for watching. Please take care of yourselves, everyone, and hope you have a spooky Halloween season.